and also hope that you had an amazing day. All right, so our lesson for today um, will be a high school English lesson, and we're going to focus on point of view, right? So we're going to be focusing on point of view, and point of view, as much as it's a high school lesson, we are going to focus on the lesson in the grade 9 or under the grade 9 class grade. Yeah. So under the grade 9 class grade, right? So we're just going to go on to A plus classes, A plus students.ca, and we will go under grade 9, and then we will look specifically at the focus notes of point of view under grade 9, right? So with point of view, it is more to do with writing or literature, right? And especially since you will be writing or you doing essays or you're doing different forms of writing, point of view is quite important or vital. So once again, this is a high school lesson, right, on English, or a high school English lesson on point of view, but we are going to A plus students.ca, and we're going to grade 9, and then we will go under point of view under grade 9. So we're going to then log in with our username as well as our password, select the subject of language arts, and then we will go to grade 9, right? So we'll go to grade 9, and then we're going to scroll down to the chapter of point of view. All right, so once we under the chapter of point of view, we are now going to identify the narrative point of view. So once again, it is a high school lesson, right, on point of view, but our focus lesson is going to come out of the grade 9 class under point of view. All right, so we're going to start. So, narrative point of view, right? So, narrative point of view, it describes the perspective from which the story is being told, right? And usually, when the story is being told, then there are three primary points of view, right? We have the first person, we have the second person, and then we have the third person, right? So you'll usually find whenever people talk or discuss certain things, especially when it comes to essays or literature, they'll say it is either in the first person voice or it's in the second person, depending on how it is also being directed, right? So, once again, a narrative point of view, it describes the perspective from which the story is told, right? So, from which the story is told. And we are going to now focus on the three primary points of view, right? So, we have the first one, which is in the first person. So, within the first person, the narrative or the narrator, it uses first person pronouns, right? So, you need to also look at the pronouns that will tell us if we're either speaking in the first person, second person, or third person, right? So, in the first person, the narrator, it uses the first person pronouns. And the first person pronouns are, for example, I, me, and us, right? So they will use first person pronouns such as I, we, and us, and me to describe events from his or her own perspective, right? Where you'll say I, blah, 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 me, whatever, us say something, we, and you say something. For example, I pressed my ear to the door. That is first person, right? So I. So once you start using I or me or we or us, where you include yourself within that point, right? Then we call that the first person. So I pressed my ear to the door, hoping to make out what she was saying, right? So the I within that sentence gives us the idea that it is in the first, or it's used within the first person, right? Then we have in second person, right? So in second person, the narrator uses second person pronouns. And second person pronouns are such as you and your, right? So you use words like you and your to direct or to address the reader, casting the reader as a character in the story, right? So as the reader, you would basically feel as if you are part of the story because with second person, the narrator uses the second person pronouns such as you and your, right? And it's almost as if it is to direct or address or directly address the reader, right? So if you are reading a book, you are the reader. So with second person, it is to directly address the reader, casting the reader as a character in the story. So once you read, and especially when they use words like you and your, you would feel as if you are part of the story. And that is second person. Then we have third person, right? Third person. This is where the narrator uses third person pronouns. So this is where the narrator uses third person pronouns and third person pronouns such as he, she, him, and her, right? As well as characters or characters' names to describe events from the perspective of an outside observer, right? So within the third person, the narrator uses third person pronouns such as he, she, him, and her, as well as the character's name to describe certain events or events from the perspective of an outside observer, right? So you will feel as if you are either an outsider or you're reading as part of being an outsider, or somebody else within the story might feel as an outsider, right? But mainly you. An example of the third person, right? Before we go to the example of a third person, it says with a third person limited. So here we also have a third person limited point of view. And this is where the observer's knowledge is limited to what a single character knows and feels. Right? You're not going to deep into something, you're not going to touch too much on it because your knowledge is just limited to what a single character knows and feels. An example of third person limited, it is looking at the excited expression of the other performers. Andrea saw a reflection of her own happy, fluttery nerves. So looking at the excited expression of the other's performance, Andrea saw a reflection of her own happy, fluttery nerves. Right? So this is where the observer just goes based on what the observer has knowledge of, right? And the knowledge is, of course, it is limited to what a single character knows and feel. So sometimes the character won't state as much in, let's say, in the book, in the novel, right? But that is where you also, or let's say, this is where our point of views come in. So then we have third person omniscient. Third person omniscient, right? Which is third person omniscient point of view. It is where the observer is all knowing and often reveals multiple characters' thoughts and feelings. So it's like it's more as if the it's as if the narrator knows the characters more on a deeper personal level, right? They know the thoughts, he knows the feelings of the characters. And that is the third person omniscient. An example of that is Robert felt his hands tremble as he placed his hands on the piano keys, but Miss Keening already knew he would play the piece flawlessly, right? It's like I say, it's as if you know the person or the type of person that he or she is, right? As much as he is shy, you know it's going to be played flawlessly. All right. So once again, right? So we have point of view. And we said the point of view, it is where the narrator's position in a relation, or the narrator's position in a relation to a story is being told. It's like asking what kind of point of view, right? Or it's telling us what kind of point of view um, within the sentence or within the text. So with point of view, right, you need to know who is describing the action in a given story. And a story might also be narrated by a character within a story describing their own experiences, or by an external narrator who describes the thoughts and feelings of one or more character. And this still links with first person, second person, and it links with third person. All right, so now let's quickly go to our whiteboard. If we go to our whiteboard, right, let's scroll, not there, to the first one. Here we have point of view and who is telling the story, right? With point of view, it is more telling something not just in a direct way, but more like in a figurative way. So here we have first person, and we say the first person is the main character that is telling the story. And when we tell a story within the first person, then we use words like I, me, we, my, our, and ours. And then we have second person, right? And this is where the author or narrator is telling the story to you as the reader. So, as the reader, you feel part of the story as if you are literally one of the direct characters. And we use words like you, your, and yours. Then we have third person, right? This is where the author or the narrator is telling the story, but it is not part of it. And it can be omniscient or it can have a limited view. And usually with the third person, we uses words like he, she, it, they, or them, and that is within the third person. All right, if we look at the page in front of us, it says the point of view is not an opinion, right? So this is when we either are doing literature or essays, right? Your point of view is not opinion, right? Because the phrase point of view also can mean opinion, as in Bill had a different point of view. Some readers have trouble understanding what the phrase means in literary terms. So when we discuss, we're not really talking about what an author's theme or opinion is, but we are simply just identifying who the narrator is and what that voice's relation to a story is. That's why sometimes you will either hear the calmness in the voice or the stress in the voice, right? Not actual stress, but the way he or she needs to, for example, mention it. All right, so here we are identifying a point of view, right? So, with identifying a point of view, we need to skip the dialogue and go to the narration. And there we have first person, second person, and third person. So, with first person, you see here it's getting broader now. It is I, me, my, niece, mine, sorry, ours, myself, we, and myself and ourselves. Then with second person, this is where you feel as if you are part of the book as the reader. So second person is you, your, yours, yourself. And then we have third person, which is she, her, he, him, them, herself, hers, them, selves, his, themselves, their, and theirs. So these are us identifying a point of view by skipping the dialogue and going to the narration. All right, now we're going to go to the first person point of view, right? So with the first person point of view, it says, so with the first person point of view, it says, anytime a writer wants to share another person's life, you will see the first person point of view. So this is where a writer wants to share another person's life, right? And then he will then use words within the first person point of view, right? With a first person view, every person reading the passage sees into the character's life. It's like they are going deep, right? So basically, you choose first person when you want to read to go, the reader to go along to the ride with you. when you feel as if you are also part of the character's life. You direct the action. And a first person can either be singular and or it can be plural, meaning we only mention one person or more than one person, right? And remember, as first person point of view, it is where the writer wants to share anything or share another person's life. Oopsie. Then we have second person point of view. And the second person point of view, it attempts to turn the reader into the character. And it is seldom used in novels, but it does give an immediate jolt. And this is where you, as the reader, feel as if you are part of the story. So, second person point of view, it is the second person point of view. It attempts to turn you, as the reader, into the character. And we see they use words like you and your. So you and your will make you feel as if you are part of the story, part of the novel, right? Because it turns you as the reader into one of the characters. And we said with second person point of view, it is seldom used within novels. Then we have the third person point of view, right? One second. Oopsie. Then we have third person point of view. Let me just make this thing. And with third person point of view, this is basically for the writer, right? For the writer who must tell several interwoven stories, he needs to provide psychological distance between the subject of the reader or who needs to stay neutral, right? And all academic writing, right? Most advertising, novels, and most of the quotations, right? This is within the third person point of view. And that is mainly for the writer. And then when it comes to fiction, so within fiction, the third person allows a writer to put the reader into the heads of all the characters, right? Where we explain important plot points and you present information in a seemingly and neutral way, right? So that is the third person point of view. And remember, when it comes to point of view, right? Point of view is not necessarily your opinion, right? And we will go back to where is that page? Over here, right? So if we go back to this page where it says point of view is not your opinion, right? Because remember, within a phrase, there's a difference between your point of view and stating your opinion on something, right? And it says because the phrase point of view also can mean opinion, right? As in Bill had a different point of view, yes, some readers have trouble understanding what the phrase mean in literary terms. So when we discuss, we are not really talking about an author's theme or opinion. We are simply identifying who the narrator is and what the voice's relation to the story is. It is basically like you deep reading into a story and giving your point of view, but not your opinion on something, right? And there is a difference because remember, the more we give opinions on things or opinions on the stories or novel, then sometimes we take away what the important lessons are of either a story or the novel. We sometimes take away what the characteristics is of the novel, right? And that is why we need to keep in mind um, how or what is basically being discussed or done either within first person, the first person point of view, second person point of view, as well as third person point of view, because there you'll get an idea as to how or what it is being directed to. All right. So once again, a narrator or the narrative point of view, which is the narrator's point of view. So narrative point of view, it describes the perspective from which the story is told. And as you can see, let me underline that word, the perspective, it describes the perspective, not giving an opinion, right? And with the perspective, it still links to the importance of either a story or a novel. So the narrator's point of view, it describes the perspective from which the story is being told, whether it is in the first person point of view, the second person point of view, or in the third person point of view, whether limited or omniscient. And we said that within the first person point of view, the narrator uses first person pronouns such as I, me, we, and use to describe events from his own perspective. So, as much as it may seem as if you're giving an opinion by saying, I think, right? Or we or us, it is not the opinion that is being discussed or given, it is the perspective that is being described. For example, I pressed my ear to the door, hoping to make out what was saying. So I. Then within the second person point of view, the narrator uses the second person's pronouns such as you and your, and it is mainly directed to the reader. So you as the reader will feel as if you are one of the characters within the story. They're casting the reader as a character within the story or the novel. It's like saying you brush a handful of crumbs onto the floor and slide into the diner booth. So if they use words like you, then it's as if it is you as the reader, right? But it's not necessarily you. That is just basically being used within the second person point of view. Then, with the third person point of view, the narrator uses third person pronouns such as he, she, him, and her, as well as characters' names to describe events from the perspective of an outside observer, right? And with that being the third person, right, we have third person limited point of view. And this is where the observer's knowledge is quite limited to what a single character knows and feel. And an example of that is looking at the excited expression of the other performers. Andrea saw a reflection of her own happy, fluttery nerves. And then we have the third person omniscient point of view. This is where the observer is all knowing and often reveals multiple characters' thoughts and feelings. Here, he is not limited, right? He's not limited to knowledge. Knowledge is not limited, right? Whereas the feelings or thoughts is not being limited. But here, the writer or the narrator is being quite vocal, right? Or let's say the observer is all knowing and often reveals multiple characters' thoughts and feelings. Like I said, it's him being more vocal. Robert felt his hand tremble as he placed his hand on the piano's keys, but Miss Keenan already knew he would play the piece flawlessly, right? It's like giving deeper thoughts and feelings, not just straight to the point, but also add ons. All right, so now we're going to quickly look at narrative point of views, right? That is shown within the passage. It says which narrative point of view is shown within the passage, right? We need to either say if it's the first person, second person, or within the third person. I am an invisible man. I am a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I am invisible, understand simply because people refuse to see me, right? He uses a lot of I within the passage, and with him using a lot of I within the passage, it tells us that he is using or speaking within the first person point of view, right? So the passage shows a first person point of view where the narrator describes events from his own, right, or his or her own perspective using the first person pronouns. And that is why I was used many times, right? So the I was used many times to show that the events was described from his or her own perspective using the first person pronouns, which is specifically or mainly I. I became what I am today at the age of 12 on a frigid, overcast day in the winter of 1975. I remember the precise moment crouching behind a crumbling mud wall, peeking into the alley near the frozen creek. That was a long time ago. But it's wrong what they say about the past. I've learned about how you can bury it. It's like burying the past because the past claws its way out. We need to say if this is in the first, second, or third person, right? So yeah, the writer starts off with I became what I am today. So the words I, right? So the personal pronouns or the second person pronouns I within this passage, it gives us the idea that it is first person point of view. This is where the narrator describes events from his own perspective using the first person pronoun, and specifically I. All right. Then the next one says, of all the countless things my son and I learned from the professor, the meaning of the square root was among the most important. No doubt he would have been bothered by my use of the word countless, too sloppy, for he believed that the very origins of the universe could be explained in the exact language of numbers. But I don't know how else to put it. We need to say if that is first person, second person, or third person. And once again, this is also within the first person, right? Because it's giving his or her perspective, right? And they're using words, for example, like my son. I learned, but I don't. You understand? So I gives us the idea that it is first person because first person pronouns was used, such as I. Oh gosh. And now, why is it doing that? It's not going next. Let's go to, sorry for this point of view. We went there and next. Oh, okay, next. All right. The bus picks up students in groups of 4 or 5. As they walk down the aisle, people who were my middle school lab partners or gym buddies glare at me. I close my eyes. This is what I've been dreading. As we leave the last stop, I am the only person sitting alone. So within this passage, this is also first person point of view, right? You're using a lot of I within the sentence, right? So they're using first person pronouns such as I close my eyes, I've been dreading, I am the only person sitting, right? So this is where they are giving their perspective from a first person point of view. The door to the premises is a retrofitted slab of glossy green plastic that slides open automatically as you approach, revealing a reception room. The lighting is tasteful, the bleached pine impeccably renewable, and the vacant reception desk supports a screen the size of Texas that's showing a dizzying motion pictures tour of an online game space. We need to say if this is within the first person point of view, second person point of view, or third person point of view, right? The perspective of what is being given. So this is a second person point of view, right? And with the second person point of view, it says that the narrator casts the reader as a character within the story. So you as the reader feels as if you are part of the story because you are being casted as one of the characters in the story. And this is where we use the second person pronouns. My Aunt Helen was my favorite person in the whole world. She was my mom's sister. She got straight A's And when she was a teenager, she used to give me books to read. My father said that the books were a little too old for me, but I liked them, so he just shrugged and let me read. All right. So once again, here we are also using first person point of view, right? Using a lot of I, my, right? So this is first person point of view. It is where the narrator describes events from his or her own perspective, right? By using words like I, me, right? We, and us. So these are the pronouns or the words that is being used, and that is being used within the first person point of view. And remember, point of view is not your opinion, right? Point of view is the perspective that you give, not necessarily your opinion. I think we did the first one, which is I am an invisible man. I'm a man of substance. I'm a man of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids. And I might even be said to possess a mind. I am I'm invisible, understand simply because people refuse to see me. And this is within the first person, right? Where we use a lot of I or me within the sentence. So, first person. Then it says, the circus looked abandoned and empty, but you think perhaps you can smell caramel wafting through the evening breeze. Beneath the crisp scent of the autumn leaves, the people around you are growing restless from waiting, a sea of shuffling feet murmuring about the abandoning endeavors in search of someplace warmer to pass the evening. You yourself are debating departing when it happens. Right? This sounds more like it's in the second person. Yes. So this is in the second person where the narrator it casts the reader as the character within the story. Yes. And especially when they use words like you can smell, but you things perhaps, right? So by using the word you, it gives us the idea that this is the second person point of view. And then I arrived here yesterday at my first task. And my first task is to assure my dear sister of my welfare is increasing confidence in the success of the undertaking. I am already far north of London, and as I walk in the streets of Petersburg, I feel a cold northern breeze playing upon my cheeks, which braces my nerves and fills me with delight. And this sounds also like it is in the first person point of view, because words like I is mainly used, me, we, and us. Right, so this is basically point of view, and we said with point of view, we have the narrator's point of view, which describes the perspective from which the story is being told. And we have three different primary point of views, which is the first person, which mainly uses words like I, me, we, and us. Then we have the second person, right, which makes the reader feel as if he is one of the characters. And then we have third person. It is when the narrator uses third person pronouns such as he, she, him, and her, with as well as characters' names to describe events from the perspective of an outside observer. So that is basically it on point of view. And remember also with point of view, it is your perspective of something, but not your opinion on something. All right, so that is basically the end of our lesson or chapter of point of view, where we identify the narrative point of view, right? So, thank you very much for joining the class, and you should have an amazing evening further. Goodbye.